This is the Makeup Show podcast, where we take some time every week to talk all things about makeup, from kit to career, from artistry to inspiration, and everything in between. With decades of experience in all areas of the industry, award-winning makeup artists Danessa Myricks and James Vincent travel the world meeting and educating makeup lovers. In this podcast, Danessa and James share the wealth of their knowledge and career insights with you.
Hey, hey, hey!
Howdy, howdy, howdy.
I'm Danessa Myricks.
And I'm James Vincent.
And this is the Makeup Show podcast.
Welcome.
This is actually the first time we're doing the Makeup Show podcast with video for YouTube. So we're used to like sitting in our PJs and looking crazy because people can only hear our voices. But today we're actually being seen. So for those of you who don't know who we are, here we are. You know, for me, it's a little weird that the first podcast that we're doing live for everyone, when I haven't been able to do nails or hair because we've been quarantined for a month.
Yeah.
Forgive me in advance, everyone who's watching.
Well, you look gorgeous to me. I'm supporting my barber by not doing anything.
I love you with this full beard. Are you kidding me? I hope it grows like 6 inches longer. What's
it's
that?
A little freedom fighter.
Or something?
Yeah, ZZ Top. That's kind of my look.
Love it.
I am excited to see you as well because I know this like social distancing thing now for us. We're like on week 5 or 6 of like quarantine.
Kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to kind of get used to it.
Yeah.
A little bit. And it's really cool actually to do this in this way. There's so many people that, first of all, the podcast is one of our favorite things to do because we're able to connect with so many people, which is always amazing. Forgive us if you hear lots of dings and things. This is our first time. So by the next time we do this, we should be okay.
Yeah, sorry, the Zoom keeps beeping.
Yeah, I have my same thing too, but it's okay. But I love the topic that you selected for today. You are like the wizard of words, especially when it comes to lists. And this particular topic makes so much sense for just where we are right now, the state of the world right now. Go ahead, let's talk about it.
Well, you know, Danessa, we get so many messages and emails from people who are listening, asking us to cover certain topics. And I thought that this one was one that a lot of people were interested in. And I think what this time in quarantine and isolation and the uncertainty of the industry and everything that's coming next, people are asking about how are you figuring out other things that you're good at? How are you discovering your gifts, your talents, and then how are you implementing them into your business or the work that you're already doing in makeup or beauty?
I love it because, you know, this time, one of the beauties that we've identified of this time is that we have lots of time and people have been doing things that they've never done before or wanted to do before, or there's a lot of exploration happening right now. So I think this topic is perfect.
Yeah, I think for me, it's been a time of kind of figuring things out. And, you know, we're setting up a studio at home. We're kind of going through this idea of doing the things that I have always felt capable of. You know, I've always done art direction. I've always done, you know, kind of been and lived in that world, but I've never really done photo styling. And now it's challenging me to do something that I love because I love aesthetic. I love the way that things look together. And I love being able to play in a way, you know, I never really had the time to step back and say, okay, can I put hours into something that might not be the final product? You know, the projects that I'm picking up are really allowing me to look at the things I love, like interior design, love it, like photo styling. And I thought if we could share that with our listeners today, it could be a great way to start. And so I did, you know, I love a list. So I did kind of a few ways to explore and identify some of the gifts that you might have that you can put into your work, and then 5 quick tips to implement them into what you're already doing.
I love it. Let's get into it.
All right. So, you know, when it comes to discovering your gifts and talents, I think sometimes people think like I'm either good at this or I'm not. And someone said something to me recently about the fact that, especially in the United States, we're so socialized to try and monetize our hobbies.
Right.
And I know that I am definitely someone who talks about that a lot. And I've done it in my own life: makeup, candle making, anything with skincare. I take what I love and then I monetize it. And these are not necessarily what you need to do with your hobbies and gifts. But if you have other things you've always wanted to try, if you have those little voices that have told you maybe this is something you should check out, checking it out is the first step. You've
Right.
got to check out the obvious. What are the things in your life that you love to do? What are those hobbies? What are those things that you said to your best friend, oh, I wish I could make money for this? Or what are your friends always bringing you in to do? We have so many makeup artists that will say, oh, I started doing my friend's makeup for prom in high school, or I started doing my daughters when they were in dance, and I just fell in love with it, and now it's my career.
It's very interesting about what you said. I love how you started it by saying, people think that they need to be good at something in order to pursue it as a hobby. And when I think back, I don't think I've ever been like just born gifted to do anything. I think the thing that I was good at was learning.
Yeah,
I like learning. Um, I was very much obsessed with people who are creative, artistic things, beautiful color, but I didn't relate that to a talent that I had. So it's
right.
really interesting that you bring that up, because there may be a thing that you just have an affinity for or a lust for, that maybe you don't have a specific talent, but now's the time where you can kind of just dig a little bit deeper and learn. Like, I clearly did not have an artist background
Yeah.
at all, but I just loved artful things, and it kind of led me to where I am today. So part of that discovery, I love that you mentioned, you don't necessarily have to have it as a talent or a hobby. It could just be something now you decide to dig a little deeper
That
in.
passion, I think that for me, I always say it, and people think I'm joking, but I really have been mediocre at everything. Like, I've never been someone who wins awards. I've never been someone who's the best at something. I'm not someone who has natural abilities. So what I have tended to do is find the things that I'm passionate about, what really fulfills me, and then figure out how I can learn to be better at those things that I'm passionate about. And I think it's that permission to make mistakes, that permission to try, to fail, but to figure it out.
Yeah, I think sometimes we don't pursue these things because it does take a lot of time.
Yeah.
You don't even really know where to begin. But the beauty about where we are right now is that we have nothing but time. So
Nothing but time. Um, and the second step after checking out the obvious is consider what it takes to do the things that you already do. And this, for me, is something that I talk about a lot. I remember when I was a social worker working with kids, and it was like, how are we helping them develop their skills? Well, what we do is break down what it takes to do the final product. So, for example, if you are a bridal makeup artist, what part of being a bridal makeup artist do you love? Do you love setting up the appointments and the bookings and dealing with the client? Do you love the consultation? Is that really where you find your joy? Do you love the design of the makeup? Do you love applying the makeup? Do you love managing the team? Do you love working with the wedding venue and the wedding planner? When you break down the things that you're already doing, it allows you to say to yourself, okay, well, wow, I really love this. For example, I love education, and I've always had a foot in education. But then through doing education, I realized I love production. I love the idea of putting on the event, of putting the pieces together, of developing the education beyond just me standing in front of the group. And so I've managed to take something I was very passionate about and hopefully good at, and really do production in my own industry. And for me, I find that to be very fulfilling.
what's so awesome about what you just said, as you were talking, I'm thinking back to all of my past jobs. And as you know, I've had like 9 lives.
Uh-huh.
And every part of my life, my career path has been completely different. When I think back to some of the previous jobs that I've had, I'm really thinking that I didn't necessarily love those jobs, but there is a part of all of those jobs that are linked together that I do love. I love process,
Yeah.
which is a weird thing to love, but I love like creating formulas and process and organizing. I'm a Virgo, so we're very obsessed about order.
Yeah.
And when I think about my makeup career now and how I learned and also how I teach, it's all process driven.
Yeah.
It's very much about these are the steps, formulas like the power of three and all those things. So there definitely is like a thread that you can follow. And that concept of kind of breaking things into little pieces, I can see how that would really help you identify, oh, actually, I don't love doing that, but this part of it, I do get a thrill out of it. I can pursue it in such a bigger way.
And I think you have to think of it in two ways. You have to think of it breaking it down to explore what it is that builds up what you already do, and then expanding it beyond what you currently do. If you're currently working as a makeup artist, something that we've seen a huge explosion is people teaching classes.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think everybody is naturally a teacher, but what other ways can you take what you love and explore it, break it down, and then bring it out forward? This is something that I want to talk about next in considering your history. Considering your history is about looking at your heritage, looking at your culture, looking about the family that you grew up in. What were those moments that you shared? What are those memories that you really love? Is there something there that you felt like it was something you could push forward? For me, it was candle making. It's something that has always been something that my family has done. It's always been something that has been part of my makeup station, things I've done for my clients. But I don't think it was until I did an artistry retreat with the powder group called Elevation, where I thought, hey, this is something I'm passionate about, but I've always kept it quiet. But when I looked and I thought some of the best moments of my life were like creating this, why am I not allowing myself the joy of doing this more often? And then, that wow moment made me think, pursue what you're passionate about and do not be embarrassed about it.
I love that so much. You know, we talk about taking these things, these gifts, and monetizing it later. And the thing about being able to monetize is that people have to really believe you, and it needs to be authentic. So this whole idea that you're bringing up of looking at your history makes so much sense, because everything that you're creating is going to come from a very authentic place, and you'll have stories to tell about it. One of the things that I learned a long time ago from a salesman. His name is Zig Ziglar. He's known all around the world. He's passed, but he used to always say, "Facts tell, stories sell." And when you have stories to connect with things that you're looking to monetize, you connect with your audience on a much deeper level, and that really changes how you're able to not only communicate your product but also to sell it. So this whole idea of getting back into your histories, I think it's perfect. It's so simple, but it's so profound, because it really is everything. It brings you back to what's authentic to you. And that authenticity is going to
Authenticity is
drive everything.
key. I think that you are such a great example of that. When I watch you do makeup all over the world, and see we're connecting to people who aren't even speaking our language, but they can tell from the joy and the way that you kind of play with the product, or if I'm talking about candles, not everyone is necessarily going to believe like I do that a color creates a certain energy, but I want to craft it in a way that even if you don't necessarily believe in color the way that I do, at least you can enjoy the fragrance. And I think when you have that authenticity, that's what allows us to step back and say, I'm going to connect with you at your level where you are right now with this information. So storytelling, a lot of people think is about the self, but what I find is storytelling is really about the other individual and sharing and showing that authenticity in sharing your gifts.
I love that so much.
The
Totally.
the next one I want to talk about is cultivating creativity. And this podcast is a constant, reminder to cultivate your creativity. This is about taking classes. This is about doing personality inventories and studies For me, with my background, I used to do a lot of leadership development for companies and for individuals using programs like Myers-Briggs. There are new programs coming out every day. There are personality studies, even on places like Facebook. But sometimes that can trigger you to say, okay, what is it that puts that fire in my belly? What is it that gets me out of bed in the morning? How is it that I'm spending the most enjoyable moments of my week, of my life right now? And cultivating that, feeding it and growing it, and then like bringing it forward and weeding it, really allows you to work and examine and say, okay, this is where I am right now.
I think that's one of the number one questions or comments that we get when we travel is like, how do I become more creative? I think that's
Yeah.
gotta be number one. And for me, what I found is sometimes doing things that are so disconnected than what you currently do is where that creativity comes from. If you're not comfortable with doing anything as advanced as the studies that you mentioned, and all of which are amazing, I've done a few of those, and it really does help you dig deep and discover.
Yeah.
But even doing something simple and different that takes you out of your regular cycle of behavior can inspire some creativity. We had a call the other day with our family from uh, uh, Green artists, yeah. And so many people commented about how, they're home with their kids. And so they're doing things that they've never done before, like homework, like water painting, and just exploring and just watching TV shows they've never done, or going through a lot of master classes online. Like cooking was something that came up a lot, that inspired energy in a different place. So I think just getting out of your comfort zone, just doing anything different, walk in a different direction, or read a different type of book, something just to trigger and inspire. It could be just the simplest things that takes you down another.
Learn that new math.
The new
That's what all of my friends are trying to struggling with while they're teaching their
I
kids.
cannot help a 5-year-old right now with their homework. It's so complicated.
The last tip that I wanted to give as far as like discovering and exploring your gifts is converse with others. And for me, I think this can be very difficult because it isn't just about talking with your friends and people who are going to say, oh yeah, that's a great idea, you're great at that. It's about speaking to leaders. It's about speaking to people who have influence. It's about speaking to experts in the industry that might already be doing it. It is about getting real information, real feedback, real critique. Not everyone necessarily is going to sugarcoat something, when you ask them a question. And I think that can be really difficult sometimes, because what we're asking you to do right now is find something that you really love and explore it, and then talk to another person about it. And the sharing part of that can be so difficult. How many times do we hear makeup artists say, oh, well, my family doesn't really understand what I do. My family doesn't really support what I do. And so I think that a lot of people in beauty already understand what it's like to tell someone, okay, this is what I want to do with my life and this is what I'm passionate about, and have them push back and say, that's not a real job, you're not going to make any money, all of that. And so what I'm saying is, when you can do the research and find people who can give you real feedback and information and make yourself vulnerable to receive that information, that allows you to figure out your gifts and say, okay, it isn't just that I like to do this, it's that I'm good at it.
Right. And I think something that's important to keep in mind when you are talking about this with others, it's never to share your dreams. I think not to say, I want to be the best. I don't think you should do that. I think it's important to like have a set of questions, because what you're really not asking anybody for permission, or if there is a possibility for you to do it. I think what we really want to ask is, what does it take? Because those are two totally different lines.
Totally.
And somebody could really break your heart and kill your dreams really fast if you're like, is this for me, or can I? I think just stepping outside of that, it's like asking someone, what does it take to be a surgeon? So the answers you get back are very specific. You need to do this level of course of study. You need to whatever those things are. So it becomes a very specific and a more of a strategic conversation, as opposed to an emotional, does someone think that you're capable conversation. And I think that's what keeps those conversations really safe.
Definitely. The next thing that I want to talk about are quick steps that you can use to implement these gifts and to explore bringing them into the things that you're already doing. And so I broke these down into 5 quick, I love a list of 5. And the first thing that I would say, what you need to do when you're looking at taking your gifts to a new place or your talents to a new place is identify who you can work with. This leads very nicely from the last tip that you gave, because when you're talking to experts in the industry, this is something that really allows you to do that. I have, I'm the oldest brother, so I give a lot of advice that nobody listens to. And I feel like sometimes they are just doing their own thing. And Jeremy will say to me, like, you're not their dad. Just like give them the advice and let them figure it out. And sometimes I feel like I'm like shouting, like, people pay me for this advice, And
Yeah.
so, like, one of my brothers is a musician. And so I say to him, like, well, why don't you volunteer at a recording studio in your time off? Because then you'll learn a little bit about production. Or why don't you speak to some people that are doing mixing at home, and maybe they can tell you a program that you can explore on your own. And I think that the reason I think that way is we already understand how to do this because we've had to do it with beauty. So when you can identify who you can work with, seeing who's already excelling, who's exceeding at that part of whatever that is, and making a name for themselves, it allows you to work with them in a number of different ways. It might just be observing them or modeling yourself after them, but it might be actually having an opportunity to study under them.
The interesting thing about what you said is that sometimes that identification of that person doesn't necessarily mean that you will physically connect with that person. There are so many ways, I think about, and this is something totally outside of beauty, but I think about the stories and the histories that I've learned about people I admire, like Pharrell, for example. When I hear him tell his story and his journey in music and where his inspiration comes from, like, I'm still following him and what he does. Never met him in his life, but he's actually mentoring me from afar, because I can still,
Love that.
I understand what he's done. There's so much information that I can find on him, so many videos, so many stories about the path that he took, conversations with Oprah, whomever, about where his mindset was at. So I'm still getting that data. So I think that advice about identifying that person that you want to work with, or that person represents the kind of person that you would want
I
to.
love that. I love that so much.
So even if you never meet them in your life, that discovery can help so much.
It is what that's like. I just had a wow there because I think I was thinking of that in such a different way. And it's so smart. Thank you. The next thing I think that you need to do is you need to analyze the need for your gifts and talents. This again is not about necessarily sharing your dreams with people, but just understanding what is the necessity for it,
Yeah.
and how willing are you to do the hard work to be able to implement this gift or start it moving forward. For me, I had always created candles, but I didn't necessarily know anything about going into that industry. I knew that I made my own toners, but I didn't know if anybody would want to purchase them. And so it really is kind of a leap of faith sometimes. But I think you also need to know if you're looking at something that is a very saturated industry, like teaching makeup right now. That might be something where you need to work a little harder to be able to implement those gifts.
What's cool about what you said, especially when you were relating it to the candles, is that, a lot of successful entrepreneurs, they are the people who can identify new needs.
Yeah.
So it could be something that you're thinking of that you won't even see. It doesn't exist, but there is a new need that you're creating. And if that is what it is, then it may be a little bit bigger for you. Like if this is a new need that you just know that there's a lot more work in communicating this need. You kind of need to sell people on why they need this thing.
Exactly.
So if it doesn't exist and it is a new need, that in itself tells you that there's a different kind of work that you're going to have to do, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not something that you can do, if that makes sense.
There's a book that I read years ago now called The Tipping Point. Uh,
Yes, I love
and it
that
really kind of talks a lot about that, because I think for me to kind of relate it back to makeup, when I developed my first makeup line 20 something years ago, it was for another company and the brand still exists. But what happened was I was like 25 years old, and they came to me one day and they said, well, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
book.
And I said, I would like to own my own makeup line. And they fired me the next day, because they said nobody, the owner of the brand said nobody builds their reputation off my back. And so I left and I started my own makeup line, and I won all these awards and did all these things. The brand was called Pretty Pretty, but it was too ahead of the trend. Like it was too difficult. And that's what I've seen in a lot of the makeup brands that I've developed. I maybe when I was young was developing things that were too ahead of the curve or the trend, and it required so much work that I was not really paying attention to the need for that product at the moment. I was just doing whatever my ego wanted me to do. And so what I've tended to do as I've gotten older is really listen and look and say, okay, how do I meet the needs? So I've taken it away from kind of my own ego and made it much more exploratory about servicing other people and being more mindful of other people.
I love that.
The next thing that you need to do is implement these new strategies, these new gifts or talents into the things you're already doing every day to test and try them out. Now, again, this can make you feel very vulnerable, because all of a sudden you're that person coming to your office with like a box of cookies for
Right.
people to try because you want to sell your cookies.
Right.
But I do think that it's a nice kind of dip your toe in first and then take the leap. So that way, when you are coming out with something, it isn't something that no one's seen before. No one's shocked when
Right.
Danessa Myricks brings out a product that is about bringing glow onto global skin tones, because it is a message that you have made very clear for a long time.
What's so perfect about what you said, and I love the example of the cookies, because, dipping your toe in could simply mean, hey, do these cookies taste good, A? And B, what are the things that come out of people's mouth when they describe my cookies? So it could be beyond just selling the cookie. It could be like giving out free cookies. That
Yeah.
doesn't sound right. You know what I mean? Free cookies in a very I'm eating a cookie kind of way. Giving out those cookies, and then it could be identifying what are the marketing terms that you're going to use to describe your cookies.
Yeah.
Like everyone is saying these are so gooey, juicy, and describing it that way. Now that you're gathering information to help you put together your marketing story. And if 9 out of 10 people say this cookie sucks or it's a little bit too hard, then you have some work to do. So relating it back to makeup, tipping your toe in could just be like having a party and just doing makeup for fun on people and hearing what their responses are. Seeing if you're able to communicate with people on a different level, just making it not about monetizing, just making it about the experience of doing that thing, just for the sake of gathering information. And once you feel confident in that space, selling is easy because you have.
Great advice. That is great advice. The next piece, very easily, expand and establish your expertise. This is the step a lot of people want to skip, but it really means constantly growing and learning more and putting yourself out there more, and then letting other people know that you're doing that. I keep using myself as an example, but even though I know what I love about candles and kind of how I craft them, and I have developed multiple skincare lines, I'm taking classes right now on working with essential oils, on working with different herbs, because I want to be able to have the language to be able to back up. I'm working with companies like the CDC right now because I want to be up on everything that's happening in my industry. I don't want to be someone who calls myself an expert if I haven't done the work. However, I do also know when I can say, I have to do some research on that, or let me find an answer for you, or here is a person who is much better at being able to tell you what this is.
I think that was so smart what you said, because I remember when I first started doing makeup, everyone thought I was insane because I didn't even wear makeup, and I wasn't somebody who showed a creative side. So there was such a disparity between this new thing that I was doing. There was never any conversation about it, and what I did in the past. So I think it's so important what you said, that like it can't be 0 from to 100. Having that conversation, as small as it may be, leading up to this big thing that you're about to do, makes more sense to your audience, as well.
Last step, announce. Announce it. You have been incubating this, you've been exploring it, you've been expanding it. Now it's time to announce. Now you want to let the world know, hey, this is who I am and what I do. And I think that can be so terrifying, because all of a sudden something that you've been known for, in a very small group of people, is now something that is going out to the masses, and that can be very scary. But you've got to get to the point where you feel very comfortable and confident in saying, hey, this is something else that I'm doing now. This is the why, this is the when, this is the how, this is the where, and now this is me. And I think that in this age of social media can be so easy to market and build, but can also feel very daunting when you're building to the point of doing it.
But what I love about this list that you put together is, after you've gone through all those steps, that in and of itself takes away the fear. You know everything about, this industry. You've done your research. You know who the successful people are, and you're mirroring their activity or their mindset. You've tested the waters. You've played a little in it. You've experimented, dabbled in it. So it's not a 0 to 100 anymore. It's like, okay, I feel good and I feel confident. Now here I am. So yeah, there's always going to be the butterfly, but it's the butterfly backed by confidence and real information. And I think that's what makes that, here I am statement, so much more powerful. And it really changes the trajectory of what that statement means for you moving forward, because you've already done all the work. So you really put together the perfect list, because, the relief is in the effort that it takes to get to that point.
It's funny because we have these conversations and we kind of look at what people are asking us to talk about, and then we kind of put our thoughts together and do the research to bring it to the audience. And it's funny because I'm listening to and forgetting that we're being filmed. So
Oh,
I don't even know what faces I've made here.
I've
I
been
don't even know.
oh, wait, dude. This is why in the beginning I asked for forgiveness for the both of us. We're used to being alone in a dark room with a microphone, and now we're not. Hard
Well,
to get rid of those old habits.
yeah, for real. I'm just not even looking forward to getting dressed again when all of this is over. So. Um, just to quickly kind of go back through that list for those of you that are taking notes, ways to discover and explore your gifts and talents. Number one, check out the obvious. What is it that you love to do or like to do, or what is it that you're good at? Number two, consider what it takes to do what you do. Break down the things that you're already doing that you love and look at the pieces that build that up, so that you can take it to a different level. Number three, consider your history, explore your culture, talk to your family, look at the things that are part of your heritage. Number four, creative cultivation.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of the word. You got to cultivate your creativity. This is classes, personal study, all of those things. Number five, converse with others, leaders, people who inspire you, people who push you to be better at what you do. Once you do all of that, you're going to identify who you can work with. You're going to analyze the need for your gifts and talents. You're going to implement slowly into your everyday and test and try. You're going to expand your expertise. And then, baby, you are ready to announce it to the world. Fly
Love it.
like an eagle.
Yes, I really love this list, and actually just hearing you go through that list again is really, I was actually rethinking some things that I may want to do and process through that list myself. This is like a tragic time just in the world, but I'm taking great solace in knowing that so many of us are really finding ways to look beyond this time and to use it as an opportunity to come out on the other side being better. And I think this list is a perfect one because I know for a fact that I have a lot of things that I've been thinking about or dabbling in the thought of that I can really use this time to kind of cultivate and maybe emerge on the other side with something special and something new. So thank you for taking the time to really put that together in such a
Thank
systematic
you.
way. My Virgo personality loved that list.
Well, guys, we love you so much, and we just appreciate. We've been getting more emails and more outreach than we usually do, and I think a lot of it is that people are really listening and educating themselves and looking at the ways they can connect with their community. And we appreciate so much that you are listening to us and trust us enough to, give you some of the answers that you're looking for, or some ideas to keep you motivated and moving forward, even when you're feeling a little uncertain about everything that's coming next.
Well, guys, you know how much we love you. Hopefully, we can retain our 5-star rating, even though you can see us.
Don't worry, it's hideous.
We really appreciate you listening in, rating and reviewing, and of course, sharing. Our audience is growing so rapidly because of you, and we appreciate your comments on social and letting us know what you like and what you'd love to hear more of. So thank you for being so supportive of us and our journey with this podcast. We appreciate our podcast family so much. So let's continue on that path.
Reach out to us on Instagram at Makeup Show Podcast. Like us, share us, do anything you need to do to let everybody know how much you love us.
I'm kind of feeling this, James, because I'm thinking about all of the guests that we wanted to have on and we couldn't be in the same space. But this way, we can kind of get all over the world with it. So this is actually turning out to be a really good thing that we may not have explored before, but I think it's going to be a good thing.
I think so too. And I think, Jeremy's going to help us work through some of the sound and technical things as we start to explore new ways to share the podcast with you, with the Makeup Show. We are going to be going on all of our platforms and letting you know all the different ways you can stay connected to your community. We're going to be bringing you some of your favorite artists and brands. And I would love to do that with the podcast as well.
Yes, we love you guys. Thank you for
tuning in. We love you guys. Thank you so much. Stay safe. Be well. Bye.